At her parents' anniversary, my sister exposed family secrets and turned the night into chaos. Sibling rivalry exploded. So this happened just a few weeks ago, and honestly, I still feel like I'm recovering from it. My family has always been complicated. I'm 23, and my younger sister Sandra is 20. She is the kind of person who thrives on being the center of attention, loud, dramatic, always needing to have the last word. Growing up, we competed over everything: grades, sports, even who got more compliments at family gatherings. But I never expected things to get as bad as they did at our parents' anniversary dinner. The setting, our parents' 25th wedding anniversary. Big massive. They rented out a cozy Italian restaurant in town, the kind with dim lights, wine bottles stacked along the walls, and waiters who all sound like they're straight out of a movie. The place was packed with family and close friends. Everyone was dressed up, laughter filling the air, wine glasses clinking. At first, everything seemed normal. Dad gave a toast, Mom got teary-eyed, and people started telling funny stories about their marriage. I was sitting with Sandra, my Aunt Lisa, and my cousin Matt at one of the big tables. Sandra had this smug look on her face the entire time, like she was waiting for something. Then, while people were clapping after one of Dad's old co-workers gave a speech, Sandra leaned over and whispered to me, "They are all so fake. If they knew what I knew about Mom and Dad, they wouldn't be smiling like that." I froze. "What are you talking about?" I whispered back. She smirked, took a sip of her wine. Well, technically she wasn't even supposed to be drinking, but of course she was, and said, "You'll see." My stomach dropped because I know Sandra. When she says something like that, it means trouble. Fast forward maybe 15 minutes, our uncle raised his glass to congratulate our parents for 25 years of love and loyalty. And that's when Sandra pounced. She stood up, clinking her glass like she was going to make a toast. Everyone quieted down, and Mom actually smiled like she was proud of Sandra stepping up. Sandra cleared her throat, eyes darting around the room, and said, "Well, loyalty is a funny word, isn't it? Because from what I remember, not everything in this family has been so perfect. Maybe it's time people stop pretending." The room went silent. Literally silent. Forks rose halfway to people's mouths. My dad's face went pale, and Mom shot Sandra the kind of glare that could. "Sandra, sit down," Dad said firmly. But she didn't. She looked right at me, like she wanted me dragged into this too, and said, "Remember when we were kids, that night we weren't supposed to overhear about Dad and it?" "Enough." Mom snapped, standing up so fast her chest reached across the floor. People were whispering now, eyes darting between Sandra and my parents. And I swear my heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear. Sandra wasn't done. She had this fire in her eyes, like she'd been waiting years for this moment. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of a family disaster none of us could undo. The moment Mom snapped at Sandra, I thought maybe she'd finally back down. But nope. If anything, it fueled her. Sandra folded her arms, tilted her head, and said loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. "Her? So we're just gonna keep pretending, like I didn't hear Dad on the phone all those years ago with some woman who wasn't you, like I didn't spend nights wondering why our perfect family wasn't so perfect." I swear you could feel the air get sucked out of the room. Plates clinked as people slowly put down their forks. My cousin Matt muttered under his breath, "Holy," while Aunt Lisa grabbed his arm like she could physically stop the words from spreading. Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Sandra, enough, sit down. You don't know what you're talking about." Sandra actually laughed, and it made my blood boil. She looked at me again, pointing and saying, "Back me up, don't you remember? You were there, you heard it too." And here's where the sibling rivalry kicked in. I did remember. We were maybe 10 and 13, hiding behind the staircase one night when we heard Dad on the phone whispering. I never told anyone because honestly, I didn't want to believe it. But Sandra, she held onto that memory like ammunition, and she just fired it straight into the middle of our parents' anniversary. "I don't think now is the time," I said through clenched teeth, trying to calm her down. But she shot back. "You're just jealous," I had the guts to say it. "You've always been the golden child, protecting them, pretending everything's fine while I'm the one actually facing reality." My mom looked like she was about to cry. Dad's face was stern cold, and suddenly the room was buzzing with whispers. Uncle Ray, never one to mind his own business, piped up. "Is she telling the truth? John, that's my dad." Mom turned on him like a hawk. "Ray, this isn't your concern." But the damage was done. Everyone wanted answers. Dad finally stood up, towering over Sandra. His voice was low, but sharp. "You don't know the full story, Sandra. You think you do, but you don't. Sit down." Sandra didn't move. She raised her glass again like she was making another toast. "The 25 years of lies and cover-ups, congratulations." And then she downed the wine like it was a shot. The tension was unbearable. Some guests started awkwardly coughing. Others avoided eye contact. Aunt Lisa whispered to me, "Do something, she's ruining everything." But what was I supposed to do? If I sided with Sandra, I'd basically be accusing Dad. If I sided with Dad, I'd look like the sibling who's always trying to shut Sandra up. Either way, I was screwed. I finally stood up and grabbed Sandra's arm. "That's enough, Sandra. You've made your point." She yanked her arm back and glared at me, her voice dripping with venom. "Of course you defend them. You always pick their side. You can't stand me being right about anything." At that moment, I realized this wasn't just about Dad's possible past. This was about years of jealousy, years of her feeling overshadowed by me. And she'd chosen tonight, the most important night for our parents, to finally unload it all. And trust me, this was just the tip of the iceberg. The tension in the restaurant was so thick I felt like I could cut it with a knife. Sandra wasn't backing down, and neither were the whispers from our relatives who now clearly suspected something was up. Dad's hands were shaking slightly as he rubbed his forehead. Mom, meanwhile, had gone completely pale, clutching her napkin like it was a lifeline. Finally, unable to hold it in any longer, Sandra dropped the bomb. "Remember that summer when Mom and Dad were supposedly away on a business trip? I know what really happened, I know about Aunt Lisa covering it up, and I know why Uncle Ray never said a word." The restaurant literally froze. I swear you could hear a pin drop over the soft hum of the Italian jazz playing in the background. All eyes turned to Aunt Lisa. She swallowed hard and muttered, "Sandra, that's not the time." Sandra ignored her. "No, it is the time. Everyone deserves to know. Mom, Dad, you've spent years pretending, hiding things from everyone, from me, from all of us, and it's pathetic." I could feel my face getting hot. I wanted to bury my head in my hands, disappear, anything. But Sandra wasn't done. "Dad, remember when you said it was just a one-time mistake? That's not true. I've got messages, emails, everything. You lied to us your whole lives." I looked at my parents, expecting tears, but instead, I saw Dad's jaw tighten and Mom's eyes fill with shock and panic. My uncle raced it up too, trying to intervene. Sandra, you're crossing a line, this is not the place. Shut up, Ray. Sandra shouted. You've been in on it too. By now, some of the restaurant staff were giving us worried looks. Guests were whispering, and a few people even quietly started leaving. Cousin Matt muttered under his breath, holy hell, this is insane. I realized something horrifying. Sandra wasn't just bringing up a minor family secret. She was exposing a past our parents had desperately tried to hide. And all I could think about was how this rivalry between us had turned our childhood memories into weapons. Mom finally found her voice trembling but sharp. Sandra, stop this, please. You don't understand. Things were complicated. We made mistakes. Yes, but you have no right to humiliate us like this. Not here, not tonight. Sandra's smirk faded, replaced with a cold, almost sad expression. I'm not humiliating you. I'm showing the truth. Everyone deserves the truth. I'm tired of the lies. And yes, I'm finally standing up, even if it destroys this perfect little party you've built. I felt my heart sink. I realized then that Sandra's actions weren't just about the secret itself. They were about years of feeling invisible, undervalued, and overshadowed by me. And the scary part? She was right. I took a deep breath and stepped in, finally trying to mediate. Okay, everyone calm down. We're family. We can talk about this, but not like this. Sandra, you don't need to ruin this night to be heard. Sandra's glare softened for a brief moment, and I could see the tension between us, the sibling rivalry, the resentment, the hurt laid bare. But she shook her head and whispered, it's too late for calm. And just like that, the anniversary celebration that was supposed to be filled with laughter and love had turned into a battlefield of old wounds, resentments, and secrets that had no intention of staying buried. By this point, the restaurant was in complete chaos. Some guests had quietly slipped out, while others were frozen in awkward horror, unsure whether to intervene or just watch the drama unfold. My parents stood at the center, stunned, their anniversary celebration completely derailed. Sandra wasn't stopping. She stepped closer to Dad, pointing her finger like a dagger. You think saying it was a mistake erases years of lies? You think pretending it never happened makes everything okay? Mom, you were in on it too. Covering for him, everyone in this room deserves to know. Mom's hands trembled as she gripped Dad's arm. Sandra, please, this isn't the way. You're tearing the family apart in front of everyone. Sandra's eyes flashed. I don't care anymore. You never cared when I was the one left out, the one hiding my pain while you two played house. Do you know what it feels like to grow up thinking everything is perfect, only to find out it's all fake? I tried to intervene, stepping between them. Sandra, stop. You're going too far. This isn't fair to anyone. We can talk about it at home. No, she shouted, spinning toward me. You always get to be the peacemaker, the one they favor, the one who gets to hide behind this so-called maturity. I'm done hiding. I'm done pretending. Uncle Ray finally stepped in, his voice sharp. Sandra, enough. You're embarrassing yourself and all of us. This isn't just about you. Show some respect. But Sandra ignored him. She turned back to Mom and Dad, her voice softer now but just as cutting. Do you remember that night at the lake house when we were kids, and I found the letters? You thought I didn't see them, didn't understand, but I did. I understood everything. And now, after all these years, I'm telling everyone the truth can't stay buried forever. Mom broke down then, tears streaming down her face. Sandra, I'm so sorry. We tried to protect you from everything, thinking it was for the best. We never wanted to hurt you. Dad's face was red, eyes full of shame. I never meant for any of this to come out. I wanted to show the family. I failed. I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to scream, to cry, to shake Sandra and tell her to stop, but I also understood why she was doing this. All those years of sibling rivalry, jealousy, and feeling overlooked had built up into this eruption. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sandra's voice cracked. I needed someone to acknowledge it. I needed someone to hear me. The room was silent, except for Mom's quiet sobs and the soft hum of a few anxious guests. The storm had hit, and for a moment, it seemed like nothing could fix the pieces. I stepped closer to Sandra, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. I hear you. I get it. You're not alone. She looked at me, eyes wet, her anger mingled with relief. Finally, she whispered. In that moment, I realized the climax wasn't about who was right or wrong. It was about unearthing years of suppressed feelings, sibling rivalry, and long-hidden truths. The anniversary was destroyed. Yes, but maybe, just maybe, it was the first step towards something real. After the eruption, the restaurant felt eerily quiet. Mom and Dad sat down, still shaking, while Sandra slumped into her chair, exhausted but oddly relieved. Guests were whispering among themselves, some trying to act polite, others just staring. I pulled out my phone to check messages, but honestly, I didn't even care about anything but the tension at our table. Uncle Ray sighed and muttered, well, that was memorable. And Lisa shook her head, muttering under her breath, Sandra's going to regret this. But I could see the worry in their eyes too. They knew the family was fragile, and now it had been cracked wide open. I leaned towards Sandra. Do you feel better? I asked cautiously. She looked at me, still teary-eyed, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. I don't know, she admitted softly. I feel like a part of me has been locked up for years, and tonight, I couldn't anymore. I nodded. I get that, I really do, but maybe there's a better way than yelling in front of everyone. Sandra's gaze hardened for a second, then softened. Maybe, she said, voice trembling. But I needed them to see it. I needed them to know I wasn't invisible. Mom finally spoke, wiping her tears. Sandra, I'm sorry, we never wanted you to feel invisible. I thought shielding you from our mistakes was protecting you. Clearly, I was wrong. Dad added, voice quiet, me too. I wanted to fix things before they got out of hand. I failed, and I see that now. I want to try to make it right. Sandra's lips quivered. You think saying sorry fixes everything? It's a start, I said, hoping my voice sounded firmer than I felt. It's not about pretending anymore. It's about acknowledging the truth and figuring out how to move forward together. She looked around at the table, eyes settling on Mom and Dad, then back on me. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive everything, but I want to try. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean. There were no magical hugs or instant healing. But it was a start. And after the chaos, that had to be enough for now. Cousin Matt finally broke the silence with a nervous chuckle. Well, at least we'll never forget this anniversary. Everyone laughed a little, more like a nervous release than actual amusement, but it felt like a tiny crack in the tension. Even Aunt Lisa smiled faintly, shaking her head. Sandra, you really do know how to make an entrance. By the time we left the restaurant, the mood was quieter but more reflective. Family had faced a storm of past secrets and sibling rivalry head-on. Sandra and I walked together to the car. I'm sorry for always competing with you, she muttered. Why, I think I just wanted to matter. You do matter, I said, nudging her lightly. Maybe we're finally starting to understand each other slowly. And in that moment, as we drove home under the city lights, I realized the anniversary wasn't about 25 years of perfect love, it was about the messy, painful, and sometimes explosive truth that comes with being a family. The days after the anniversary were tense to say the least. Texts, calls, and awkward family meetups filled the gap between that night and the first real conversation we could have. The house felt different, like the walls themselves had absorbed the chaos and were now whispering reminders of the secrets that had come out. Sandra and I stayed in touch more than usual. Not with fights or passive-aggressive comments, but real conversations. She opened up about how isolated she felt growing up, how she'd always felt overshadowed by me, and how the secrets she revealed were her way of forcing attention to herself. I didn't always know what to say, but I listened. For once, I wasn't competing, I was understanding. Mom and Dad, meanwhile, were struggling too. Dad started spending hours in the study, writing emails to people he'd once trusted to keep quiet. Mom, quieter than usual, seemed to hover on the edge of guilt and exhaustion. Aunt Lisa tried to mediate, reminding everyone that healing would take time, but also admitting that the anniversary revelation had been a necessary wake-up call. One afternoon, Sandra and I went for a walk in the park near our neighbourhood. The autumn leaves were falling, and the chill in the air felt like it mirrored the tension between us, a mix of sharpness and inevitability. You know, Sandra started, kicking a pile of leaves, I don't want to fight with you anymore. I just want you to see me, not as your little sister, not as the troublemaker, but just me. I nodded. I see you, Sandra, and I get why you exploded at the anniversary. It wasn't just about Mom and Dad, it was about us, and everything that built up between us over the years. She looked at me, a little surprised. You really get it? I think so, I said, a small smile tugging at my lips. We've always been rivals, yeah, but maybe we can be allies sometimes too, not all the time, but sometimes. She laughed a genuine, soft laugh, and it felt like the first time in a long time that our sibling rivalry didn't feel suffocating. Sometimes is a start, she agreed. That night, at home, the atmosphere was calmer. Mom cooked dinner quietly. Dad offered small smiles, but avoided the topic of the letters and emails. It felt like the family was tiptoeing into a new rhythm, tentative, cautious, but moving forward. Sandra and I shared a small moment in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, talking about silly memories from our childhood. For a while, the tension faded. I realized that sibling rivalry wasn't something that could disappear overnight, but understanding, empathy, and honesty could make it manageable. By the end of the week, I noticed small changes. Mom and Dad seemed less guarded. Sandra was quieter but more thoughtful, and I felt a sense of cautious optimism. The anniversary hadn't ended the way anyone planned, but in exposing the secrets, it had opened a door. A door to honesty, a door to trust, and a door to sibling connection I didn't think we'd ever find. Weeks had passed since the anniversary disaster, and the house finally felt less like a battlefield. The tension was still there like a faint hum in the background, but it no longer dictated every conversation. My parents were cautiously optimistic. Sandra and I were talking more, and even Aunt Lisa seemed relieved that the storm had, at least temporarily, passed. One Saturday, we decided to have a small family dinner at home. No fancy restaurants, no speeches, just pasta, wine, and casual chatter. Mom cooked, Dad helped with setting the table, and Sandra and I ended up in the kitchen, laughing at how hopeless we were at folding napkins neatly. You know, Sandra said, tying her apron in a dramatic knot, I still can't believe I said all this stuff at the restaurant. I was terrifying. I laughed. Yeah, you were a hurricane, but I get it. And honestly, maybe the hurricane was what we needed. She looked at me thoughtfully. Do you really forgive me for making it such a nightmare? I shrugged, smiling. I don't think forgiveness is even the point. We just needed to understand each other, and we did, a little. Mom called from the living room. Dinner's ready, you two. As we walked to the table, the family atmosphere felt lighter than it had in months. There were no accusations, no tense silences. Just small smiles, quiet laughter, and a tentative sense of normalcy. During dinner, Dad raised his glass. To honesty, he said softly, and to facing our mistakes even when it's painful. Sandra met my eyes and gave a small, almost shy smile. I clinked my glass with hers. To understanding each other, I added. The night went on with stories, laughter, and even a few gentle jokes about the anniversary disaster. For the first time in a long time, I realized that sibling rivalry didn't have to be destructive. It could be a way to push each other toward honesty, even if it came in the most chaotic, dramatic way possible. Later, as we cleaned up the kitchen together, Sandra leaned against the counter. You know, I don't think I'll ever stop being dramatic, but maybe I don't have to be at the expense of everyone else. I grinned. That's a start, and hey, drama makes life interesting, right? She laughed, and it wasn't the sharp, challenging laugh from before. It was softer, more genuine. Yeah, I guess it does. That night, I realized the anniversary hadn't ruined anything. It had broken open years of suppressed secrets and sibling rivalry, sure. But it also forced us to face what mattered most, honesty, understanding, and the fragile, messy love that comes with being a family. Sandra and I sat on the porch for a while, the city lights sparkling around us. Do you think Mom and Dad will ever fully forgive me? She asked quietly. I think they already have, in their own way, I said. It's not about forgetting, it's about moving forward. She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. And in that moment, I knew that, messy as it was, we survived the storm together, and maybe, just maybe, the rivalry could finally become something that bonded us instead of tearing us apart.